The war against the Separatists had reached a critical point, and the Jedi Council was convened in an emergency session at the temple on Coruscant. Master Yoda felt a disturbance in the Force, something dark and sinister approaching, though its nature remained veiled. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood beside Master Windu, discussing the latest intelligence reports about General Grievous' location on Utapau. Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi had been summoned from their respective missions, their presence necessary for what the Council believed to be the final push against the Separatist leadership. Then, the decision was made that Anakin Skywalker, despite not having received the title of Master, would be the one to go to Utapau and confront Grievous. It was a mission of extreme importance, and the young knight had proven himself capable time and again in battle. Anakin felt a mixture of pride and frustration as he prepared for his departure. The Council's decision to send him alone to face Grievous was significant, but the wound of having the title of Master denied still burned within him. Before leaving for Utapau, he decided to visit Chancellor Palpatine one last time, seeking counsel from the man who had been like a father to him over the years. As he entered the Chancellor's office, the air seemed heavy, charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Palpatine greeted him warmly, but there was something different in his eyes, something ancient and knowing. The conversation quickly turned to the nature of the Force, and the Chancellor began to speak of powers that the Jedi would consider unnatural. Anakin's hand moved instinctively to his lightsaber as Palpatine revealed himself as Darth Sidious, the very Sith Lord they had been searching for years. Anakin's blue saber ignited with a characteristic hum, illuminating the office with its intense glow. Palpatine smiled, that sinister smile that revealed decades of manipulation and deception. Anakin kept the saber pointed at the Chancellor, his mind racing with the implications of this revelation. All the years of friendship, all the counsel, all the intimate conversations had been part of an elaborate plan. Rage grew within him, but also clarity. He thought of Padme, of their future together, of the visions that tormented him. Palpatine began to speak about how only through him could Anakin save those he loved. The young Jedi tightened his grip around the saber, the internal conflict evident on his face. For a moment that seemed like an eternity, he considered the Sith's words. Then, with a decisive movement, he turned off his lightsaber. Palpatine smiled more broadly, thinking he had won. But Anakin took a step back, clipping the saber to his belt. His voice was firm when he spoke, without the tremor of doubt that Sidious expected to hear. He said he would denounce the Chancellor to the Jedi Council, that the Republic needed to know of the betrayal that had been perpetrated at its heart. Palpatine tried to argue, his voice taking on a more threatening tone, but Anakin was already turning to leave. He ran through the corridors of the Senate building, his communicator already in hand. The call to Mace Windu was answered almost immediately, and Anakin quickly explained the situation. Windu's voice on the other end was tense, controlled, but Anakin could feel the urgency. Windu said he would gather the Masters and would arrest Palpatine immediately. Anakin insisted he would come along, that his place was beside the Masters at this crucial moment. But Windu was inflexible, his voice carrying the authority of years of leadership. He said that Anakin needed to go to Utapau as planned, that Grievous was still a threat that needed to be eliminated. The Council would deal with Sidious, and this was the way Anakin could best serve the Order and the Republic. For the first time in a long time, Anakin felt he was being truly valued, that his mission had real purpose. He agreed, promising to depart immediately for Utapau. As his starfighter took off from Coruscant, he looked back one last time, unaware of the storm that was about to descend upon the Jedi Temple. At the temple, Yoda closed his eyes, the disturbance in the Force growing stronger with each passing moment. Mace Windu gathered only Yoda for the mission to arrest Palpatine, knowing that the other Masters would be needed at the temple in case something went wrong. The two most powerful Jedi Masters of the Order walked with determination toward the Chancellor's office. When they arrived, Palpatine awaited them, no longer disguising his true nature. The battle that followed was intense, the lightsabers cutting through the air as the energy of the dark side collided with the light of the Jedi. Windu fought with his Vapad form, channeling the darkness back against his opponent. Yoda leaped and spun with an agility that defied his frail appearance, his connection to the Force evident in every movement. Palpatine was powerful, fueled by decades of study of the dark side, but against two masters of this magnitude, he began to lose ground. His expression changed from confidence to something close to despair. Realizing he was losing the battle, Palpatine called out for his Red Guards. The doors burst open violently and dozens of soldiers entered, their blasters firing incessant bursts of energy. Windu deflected the shots with his purple saber, but the number of attackers was overwhelming. Yoda used the Force to push several guards against the walls, but more kept coming. The Chancellor's chamber transformed into chaos of blaster lights and lightsabers. Palpatine took advantage of the distraction to retreat, laughing sarcastically while his guards created a barrier between him and the Jedi. Windu looked at Yoda, both instantly understanding they needed to retreat and regroup. They couldn't win there, not against so many enemies and with Sidious recovering. With coordinated movements, the two masters began to retreat, deflecting shots and using the Force to create obstacles in the guards' path. As they escaped from the Senate building, Palpatine reached for his special communicator, the one connected to all clone commanders of the Republic. His voice was laden with venom when he pronounced the words that would change the galaxy forever. He activated Order 66, the contingency command that would transform every clone soldier into a Jedi hunter. Throughout the universe, clones who had fought side by side with their Jedi generals suddenly turned against them. The behavioral chip implanted in their brains overrode years of camaraderie and loyalty. But on Coruscant, at the Jedi Temple, the threat was different. Entire platoons of clones began marching toward the sacred building, their orders clear: eliminate all Jedi. The Temple Guard was the first to notice the suspicious movement, the clones advancing in combat formation. Windu and Yoda arrived at the temple just minutes before the clones. Their breathing labored but their minds focused. Windu immediately convened an emergency meeting with all available masters. Obi-Wan was there, as were Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi, their faces showing growing concern. Yoda shared what had happened, his grave voice echoing through the council chamber. He said that the dark side had finally revealed its master plan, that Sidious was Palpatine, and that the Republic had fallen into the hands of a Sith Lord. Obi-Wan felt his heart tighten as he thought of Anakin, but Windu quickly reassured him, saying that the young Skywalker had been responsible for discovering the truth and was now on his way to Utapau. There was no time for further explanations, as the temple sensors showed the approach of a massive clone force. The Masters moved quickly, organizing the temple's defenses. Obi-Wan took command of a group, positioning himself at the side entrances. Plo Koon coordinated the evacuation of the younglings and Padawans to the safer areas of the temple. Ki-Adi-Mundi worked with the Temple Guard, who were already armed and ready to defend their sacred home. Yoda and Windu took position at the main entrance, the place where the first attack would surely come. Through the great doors, they could see the clones approaching, hundreds of them marching in perfect synchrony. Windu ignited his purple saber, the blade reflecting in his determined eyes. Yoda remained calm, his small green saber still clipped to his belt. He told Windu that the Force was with them, that the light side would not be extinguished so easily. The clones stopped a few meters from the entrance, their weapons aimed at the two masters. The commander at the front shouted the order to fire, but before a single shot could be fired, Yoda closed his eyes. The Force flowed through him like a powerful river, connecting him to every living being around him. With a subtle movement of his hand, a wave of invisible energy emanated from the small master. The entire front platoon was thrown backward, their bodies flying through the air and falling disorganized on the ground. The clones in the back hesitated for a moment, confused by what they had witnessed. But the chip in their brains did not allow questioning, only obedience. They began to advance again, this time more dispersed, firing continuous bursts of blue energy. Windu sprang into action, his saber spinning in a purple blur as he deflected each shot with deadly precision. The battle for the temple entrance had begun, and the sound of blasters and lightsabers filled the air. Yoda leaped among the clones, his saber cutting weapons and disarming soldiers with surgical precision. He didn't want to kill the clones, knew they were victims as much as the Jedi, controlled by something beyond their will. Windu, however, understood that sometimes there was no choice, and his saber found lethal targets when necessary to protect the temple. Other masters arrived to support them, emerging from the side entrances and attacking the clones' flanks. Obi-Wan led a group from the right. The temple guard fought fiercely, their ceremonial uniforms now stained with the brutal reality of combat. The clones kept coming, waves upon waves of soldiers programmed to destroy everything the Jedi represented. Inside the temple, Plo Koon coordinated the internal defenses with military efficiency. His calm but authoritative voice guided the less experienced Jedi to their positions. He had transformed the sacred corridors into choke points, where the clones would have difficulty using their numerical superiority. Barriers were erected using the Force. Ancient pillars and statues moved to create obstacles. The older Padawans were given the task of protecting the younger ones, taking them to the deeper chambers of the temple where ancient Jedi archives were kept. Plo Koon knew that even if they fell that day, the knowledge and the children needed to survive. He constantly communicated with Yoda and Windu at the front, updating them on the internal situation. Each report showed that, despite the losses, the temple still held. Ki-Adi-Mundi fought fiercely at one of the side entrances, his blue saber a blur of movement. His species, Saurian, was known for their ability to process multiple lines of thought simultaneously, and he used this to anticipate the clones' movements. He shouted orders to the temple guard around him, coordinating counterattacks while defending critical positions. A group of clones tried to flank his position using jetpacks, but the master was ready. He used the Force to pull two of them from the air, making them collide with each other before falling. His saber then met the others, deactivating their flight equipment and making them fall heavily to the ground. The battle was intense, but there was something different this time. The masters were all present, not scattered across the galaxy, and their coordination was perfect. Obi-Wan fought alongside several Jedi Knights, his mind divided between the battle and concerns about Anakin. He knew that his former Padawan was on Utapau, facing Grievous alone, unaware of the chaos that had taken over Coruscant. But he needed to trust in the Force and in the skills he had taught the young man. A clone tried to surprise him from behind, but Obi-Wan felt the intention through the Force and spun, his saber cutting the blaster in half. He used a Force push to throw the soldier against his companions, creating an opening. Through his communicator, he heard reports from different sections of the temple. Some clones had managed to enter, but were being contained by the Jedi in the internal areas. The situation was difficult, but not desperate. Yoda moved among the clones like a ghost, his small form almost impossible to hit. He used the Force in ways that few Jedi could imagine, not just to attack or defend, but to confuse and disarm. With a gesture of his hand, the blasters of an entire group of clones were torn from their hands and thrown away. With another, he created an energy barrier that absorbed the shots and dissipated them in the air. His voice echoed through the Force, reaching all the Jedi in the temple. "Strong in the Force you are," he said. "United we shall remain. Fall the temple will not, while together we fight." His words gave courage to the defenders, reminding them of why they fought. It wasn't just for their lives, but for the future of the Force, for the galaxy's hope. Windu cut through another group of clones, his face a mask of intense concentration. He could feel the dark side growing stronger on Coruscant, Palpatine surely consolidating his power over the Senate and the Republic. But here, at the temple, the light side still shone brightly. He communicated with Obi-Wan through the Force, checking the status of the side defenses. Obi-Wan responded that they were holding, but that the clones seemed infinite. Windu knew they couldn't win a war of attrition, that eventually they would be overwhelmed by the numbers. They needed something to change the tide of battle. He looked at Yoda, and the ancient master nodded slightly, understanding the unspoken thought. They needed a miracle or someone powerful enough to make a difference. The temple guard fought with a ferocity born of desperation and duty. These were soldiers who had dedicated their lives to protecting the most sacred place of the Jedi, and they would not fail now. They used tactics they had practiced for years, positioning and teamwork compensating for their inferiority in numbers compared to the clones. Some fell, their sacrifices allowing others to hold the lines. A young member of the guard, wounded but still standing, held a position alone for precious minutes, his saber never stopping moving until reinforcements arrived. Around him, the temple walls showed marks of blaster fire, scars on stone that had witnessed centuries of peace. Now, that peace was being tested like never before, and every Jedi present was determined not to let it break. On Utapau, Anakin had confronted General Grievous in the lower levels of the Sinkhole City. The battle had been brutal, the general using his 4 arms and stolen sabers with deadly skill. Anakin fought with the rage that always threatened to consume him, but this time he channeled it with control. He thought of Padme, of the future he wanted to build, of the trust the Council had finally shown by sending him on this mission. Grievous tried to intimidate him, his mechanical cough echoing between attacks, but Anakin remained focused. With a quick movement, he cut off 2 of the general's arms, the sabers falling into the abyss below. Grievous tried to flee, but Anakin used the Force to pull him back. The final confrontation was quick and decisive, Anakin's blue saber finding the general's mechanical heart. With Grievous dead, Anakin immediately tried to contact the temple. What he found was static and then, finally, a weak connection. The voice of a frightened Padawan informed him that the temple was under attack, that the clones had turned against them. Anakin felt his blood freeze, his mind immediately going to the worst scenarios. He ran to his fighter, R2, D2 beeping worriedly at his side. The small droid felt his master's urgency and prepared the hyperdrive faster than ever. As he jumped to hyperspace, Anakin tried to meditate, tried to reach Obi-Wan or any of the masters through the Force. All he felt was conflict and danger, but also determination. The temple still held, and he needed to get there as fast as possible. The journey back to Coruscant seemed to last an eternity, each second torture for Anakin. He mentally reviewed everything Palpatine had said, looking for clues about the larger plan. The Sith had planned this for decades, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Anakin felt guilty for not having realized it sooner, for all the times he had blindly trusted the Chancellor. But he also felt pride for having made the right choice in the end, for having refused the dark side when it was offered. R2, D2 beeped an update showing they were approaching Coruscant. Through the fighters' windows, Anakin could see the capital planet, but something was different. There was smoke rising from several points in the city, signs of battle everywhere. Anakin piloted his fighter toward the temple, and what he saw made his heart tighten. The entrance was surrounded by hundreds of clones, and he could see the flashes of lightsabers fighting against the sea of white armor. He descended quickly, landing his fighter close enough to cause confusion among the clones. Jumping from the cockpit, his saber already ignited, he ran toward the battle. The nearest clones turned to him, but he cut them down before they could react. He carved a path through the enemy lines, his rage now fully released but directed. These soldiers he had commanded, who had fought at his side, now tried to destroy everything he loved. It was Windu who saw him first, surprise evident on his face. Anakin reached the masters at the main entrance, his arrival like lightning in a storm. Windu lowered his saber momentarily, shouting to be heard over the sound of battle. He quickly explained what had happened, how Palpatine had been revealed as Sidious, how they had tried to arrest him but were forced to retreat. Anakin listened, his jaw tight, processing each word. Yoda observed the young knight, feeling the turbulent emotions within him, but also something more, something that had changed. "Victorious you were on Utapau," said Yoda, "but here, greater battle we face." Anakin nodded, asking what needed to be done. Windu said they needed to hold the temple until they could organize a proper evacuation, that Sidious was too powerful to be defeated now. But Anakin had other ideas. He said he would go to Palpatine and end this, that he was their only chance. Windu immediately opposed, his voice firm and authoritative. "Anakin, no. You cannot face him alone. The dark side is seductive, and you will be corrupted or killed." Anakin looked at his former superior, then at Yoda, and finally at Obi-Wan, who had just joined them. He said he understood the risks, but this was the will of the Force. Palpatine had focused on him for years, trying to seduce him, which meant he saw a threat in him. Before any of the Masters could stop him, Anakin was already running back to his fighter. Windu shouted his name again, but the young Skywalker didn't stop. R2, D2 beeped worriedly when his master returned, but prepared the fighter for immediate takeoff. Anakin flew through the skies of Coruscant toward the Senate building, his mind focused on a single thing: ending Sidious. He could feel the Sith's presence, like a wound in the Force, pulsing with malignant power. Part of him feared the confrontation, remembered how Palpatine had easily dominated other Jedi in the past. But another part, the part that had destroyed the Tusken Temple, that had executed Dooku, that part yearned for battle. He landed the fighter recklessly on the landing platform, not caring about protocols. The Red Guards tried to stop him, but he knocked them down with force pushes, not even deigning to use his saber against them. He marched through the corridors to the Chancellor's office, the doors opening with a gesture of his hand. Palpatine was there, waiting, as if he knew Anakin would come. The Sith Lord smiled, that horrible smile, his yellow eyes glowing with malice. He said he was disappointed, that he had offered Anakin everything: power, knowledge, the ability to save Padme. But the young man had chosen the arrogance of the Jedi. Anakin ignited his saber, the blue blade reflecting on his determined face. He responded that he had chosen what was right, not what was easy, and that Sidious's reign of terror would end there. Palpatine laughed, a sound that echoed with decades of evil. He said that Anakin was powerful, but still just a child playing with forces he didn't understand. The Sith attacked first, red lightning of energy shooting from his hands. The battle that followed was unlike anything Anakin had experienced. Palpatine wasn't just powerful, he was skilled in ways that defied comprehension. Each attack came from impossible angles, each defense was perfectly timed. Anakin used all his training, every technique Obi-Wan had taught him, every trick he had learned in the Clone Wars. But Sidious had studied saber combat for decades, had destroyed Jedi Masters before. Slowly, inexorably, Anakin began to lose ground. A blow struck his shoulder, making him stagger. Another nearly cut off his head, only his reflexes saving his life. Palpatine laughed as he fought, ridiculing each of Anakin's attempts to hit him. The decisive moment came when Sidious used the Force to wrench the saber from Anakin's hand, the weapon flying across the room and falling out of reach. Anakin stood there, unarmed, facing the most evil being in the galaxy. Palpatine raised his hands, lightning beginning to form between his fingers. He said that Anakin had had his chance and wasted it, that now he would die as all Jedi would die. The lightning shot out, a torrent of pure dark side energy directed at the young Skywalker. Anakin raised his hands instinctively, and something extraordinary happened. The energy didn't consume him, but rather was captured, held in the palms of his hands. Anakin felt the energy burning, trying to destroy him, but he held it, controlled it, something no Jedi should be able to do. Palpatine's expression changed from triumph to shock and then to fear. Anakin pushed with all his strength, not just physical but with the Force as well, and the lightning returned to its creator. Sidious tried to defend against them, but the amplified energy was too much. The lightning struck him, consuming the Sith Lord in agony. He screamed, a horrible sound that echoed through the Force across all of Coruscant. Anakin didn't stop, kept pushing, channeling all his rage, all his fear, all his determination through the lightning. Palpatine fell to his knees, his body convulsing, the very energy he had used for so long now destroying him. With one last scream, Darth Sidious, the Emperor who could have been, collapsed, his body smoking and motionless on the office floor. Anakin fell to his knees as well, exhausted, his hands smoking and burned. He looked at them, seeing the lightning still dancing between his fingers before finally dissipating. What had he done? He had used the dark side, had killed with rage, but to save the temple, to save the order. He picked up his lightsaber, the weapon feeling heavier than ever, and slowly stood up. Through the Force, he could feel the change, the clones throughout the galaxy suddenly confused, the command in their brains disappearing with the death of its transmitter. Not completely free, but hesitant, giving the Jedi time to breathe. Anakin returned to his fighter, his hands trembling as he gripped the controls. R2, D2 beeped worriedly, but Anakin reassured him, saying he was fine or would be fine. When Anakin returned to the temple, the battle was still continuing but was waning. The clones seemed less coordinated, some even lowering their weapons in confusion. Anakin landed and got out, and this time it was different. Some clones saw him and prepared to shoot, but he raised his hands, and blue lightning shot from them. Not the red lightning of Sidious, fueled by pure hatred, but something different, more controlled. The clones were struck and fell, not dead but incapacitated. Anakin advanced, using this new ability to clear the path, the Jedi around him watching with a mixture of amazement and concern. He reached the entrance where Windu and Yoda were still fighting, and together the three began to push the clones back. The tide of battle turned, not because the Jedi were stronger, but because their enemy was now divided and confused. It took hours to completely clear the temple and the surrounding area. When it was finally over, the Jedi gathered, tired but alive. The losses had been significant, but less than they would have been if the Council had been scattered across the galaxy. Anakin stood at the center, all eyes on him. His hands still showed burns from the lightning, evidence of what he had done. Obi-Wan approached first, placing a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder. He said nothing, just nodded, a gesture of understanding and acceptance. Yoda walked up to Anakin, his ancient eyes studying the young man. "Fulfilled the prophecy is," he said, "balance to the force you brought, not through destruction but through sacrifice. The chosen one you are, and master you must be." Windu, always the most pragmatic, also approached. He admitted there had been doubts about Anakin, fears about his power and his emotions. But what Anakin had done proved that he could control both, that he could use even aspects of the dark side without being corrupted when fighting for the light side. It was something the Jedi had forgotten, that balance didn't mean absolute purity, but the ability to recognize and integrate all parts of the Force. Windu extended his hand, and when Anakin took it, he said the words the young man had waited so long to hear. "Knight Anakin Skywalker, for your service to the Republic and the Order, the Council grants you the title of Jedi Master. Take your place among us." The other Jedi who had survived began to gather, and one by one, they bowed their heads to the new master. Anakin felt tears in his eyes, not of sadness but of relief and fulfillment. He had faced his greatest temptation and prevailed, had used power that could have corrupted him but remained true to the light. Plo Koon approached and placed a hand on his shoulder, saying he had honored all the training he had received. Ki-Adi-Mundi agreed, adding that Anakin had proven that age and patience weren't the only paths to wisdom. Obi-Wan was proud beyond words, seeing the man his Padawan had become. He knew there were still challenges ahead, that the Republic would need to be rebuilt, that many Jedi had been lost across the galaxy. But in this moment, they had one.